Good morning and welcome to Judging by the Cover. Now, today we are looking at Prison Architect, but I would like to go ahead and preface this with a little caveat here. I tend to not try and get too politically driven on the channels and all of that, but I just want to throw this out there. We want to promote humane treatment in the real world. So, with that caveat, this is I felt like this would be a little ironic opportunity to look at an opportunity to build up a prison situation in a way that could be far more humane. And like, if you want to build your own prison situation, here's a way to do it without hurting anybody: to run a little simulator, and you can build a prison that has probably more value than some of the things that are going on in the world today, all at a value for a lot less than they're spending. Anyways, that said, we're looking at Prison Architect here. It's an interesting little game here, very simple graphics. Honestly, the $30 price tag on the baseline seems a bit much, but I will say there is a chunk of DLC for this, and it is currently, at the time of this episode, on sale on Steam with even more DLC than is available on the Switch. So if it's something that interests you for a little simulator, by all means, give it a look. Give that something to think about. It looks like you do get a lot of gameplay out of it. If you like those kinds of Sim City type of games with a bit of a twist, where the graphics is kind of the fallback, or the not the main focus. Like I said, it is very simple. It looks like it could have even been a mobile game, but it looks like they do give it a lot of polish mechanically, a lot to go for with here. So we're actually going to look at the Nintendo Switch page and see all of what the Switch has to offer. So we have a trailer here, and several of the DLCs also have trailers, which I did give a look. The trailers do have a lot of little charm to them with what it offers without giving away too much. So with that, we're going to take a quick look through screenshots here. We do have one that looks like it has work programs, power generator here. Looks like religious services for the inmates on one side, which is something that is included in a lot of jail programs, to my understanding. We do have the dormitories, cells, showers, the things you expect to see in a prison, different yard areas, work areas, uh, all kinds of different things. It looks like they even have a full-blown little class setting, which is probably used for corrections officer training or meetings, anything of that sort. Outdoor. We do have an infirmary here, so you do see that you can put in medical services for your prison. Honestly, it looks like it does give you some freedom on how you want to design your prison. Hopefully, if you all want to manage something, you clean up any little incidents that you have out here when there's little violent situations, because people are going to, have those kinds of issues. There are going to be fights and stuff like that. Um, Going straight into description, your design, their fate. In Prison Architect, you will see the impact of your grand design on the lives of your inmates, be it a utopic center of rehabilitation, a brutal supermax prison, or anything in between. So, again, it gives you that freedom to develop your prison the way you see fit and make it as humane or as focused on social programs as possible, which honestly seems like it could be an interesting way to go about things. Now, it is all simulation. There is, if things were to try out in the real world, there is always that human factor that can't always be accounted for. Acting as both architect and governor, you control every detail of your prison, from building new cells and facilities to hiring staff and creating reform programs. That right there, the hiring staff, if it gives you, like, lists of different people, personalities, and credentials to pull from, you can probably pick like the kinds of backgrounds and manage the staff, like hire and fire as you see fit, depending on how they work in your facilities, all while dealing with informants, contraband smuggling, gang warfare, full scale riots, and more. You expose your prison to a whole host of outrageous characters who will impact your prisons in unique ways, take charge of new prisons, and build your penitentiary on exciting new plots. So it looks like it does have potentially where you have build your own and maybe even a kind of campaign mode where you take maybe a pre-built situation and you have to like reach certain objectives or benchmarks with that. Because I remember back in the day, SimCity had those kinds of things too. All Day and Night contains 8 new wardens, 8 new prison maps, and 8 new plots to expand your prison experience and bend the rules. So the All Day and Night is a little something else in there. Show off and share your presence in World of Wardens. You get your own WoW situation here. Equip your prison with new padded cells and criminally insane wings. So it does have, looks like it comes preloaded with some of the things that are probably maybe separate DLCs. Now, like I said, this is also available on Steam, and at the time of recording this, I noticed the Steam does have more DLC available, and the entire DLC bundle was on sale for somewhere around like near $50, I believe. Whereas here we're looking at $30 for the base game, and we are going to look at the bundles that we have here. There is 6 DLCs on the Switch. 3 of them come in this Switch bundle for $52.99. You can get the Switch bundle with Escape Mode, Going Green, and Island Bound. And we'll be looking at each of those individually and accounting for all of that in our final rating of the game. So the download content, like I said, we do have 6 DLCs to look at. Escape Mode, Island Bound, and Going Green are the first 3 that are included in that Switch bundle. So Escape Mode, it looks like it does have inmates setting up an escape plan where, these guys are dealing with each other, dealing with their shops, dealing with their cafeteria stuff. The screenshots do show just little snippets, but because of the graphic style, the screenshots don't really seem to show a whole lot of what's going on. But we do get to see just enough. Like, we're seeing numbers, probably dollar amounts that those particular characters have in their accounts. And one totally roided out muscle guy, it looks like. We do have somebody out here digging in an underground with a little hit point meter, probably for the wall for where they're trying to get to. So you swap the role of architect for your inmate and try to break out of your prisons. Okay, so this one, interestingly enough, has, instead of you playing the architect trying to contain an escape situation, you are the prisoner playing the escape scenario. Will you earn essential cash by working an honest job or steal money from your fellow inmates? Will you plan a stealthy underground escape or raid an armory and shoot your way out? Whatever you do, remember to bring plenty of bacon to bribe the sniffer dogs with. You take control of a prisoner and break out of any prison in World of Wardens. Oh, in the World of Wardens. Okay, so the World of Wardens appears to be like the online network where, like the last page said, where you can share your prisons and then you give other people the opportunity to break out with this DLC. You earn XP and spend points to unlock new skills and power up your prisoners, bribe guards to evade punishment, sneak, fight, or tunnel your way to freedom, recruit crew members and assign them orders, and call up the boss to smuggle in contraband and carry out assassinations. So you do get a lot of different gameplay options here, all for $9 on its retail price, which to add basically adding an entire new game into your existing game, that seems like a pretty interesting spin on the situation there, with 27 new collectible snapshots. So there's something to look forward to. Then we have Island Bound. Now, this one looks more along the lines of, making your own like ocean-based prison. We have barges, helicopters. We have this whole thing to bring people in across the little catwalks. Depending on how you have it set up, it looks like they do have some open air layouts as opposed to, being completely walled in, which, because you're on an island, the breaks can have their own little situation. But of course, it looks like they do have a whole different approach to emergency situations. I'm sure in sim games, disaster events are pretty much the bread and butter of the game, or one of the main features a lot of times. So, you have fire suppression, you have to deal with emergency services having to come out to a remote facility. So, welcome to the Rock, Wardens. Prison Architect Islandbound introduces more ways to build and manage your prison. Sea and air, you use a variety of ferry and helicopter transports to deliver supplies and inmates directly to docking areas around your compound. However, there are also more access points to sneak contraband into the prison. Okay, so you can have, I'm guessing that's something along the lines of having like the manned and secure docks where things don't come in unless you know about it. But then there's also the unmanned shores, and if you have like some blind spots, then maybe something slips in from the shorelines. So that could be an interesting little twist there, something to kind of force you to manage and deal with other situations. Chain link up, you maximize your prison's efficiency by linking docks, helipads, and roads to specific deliveries. Toggle what services are available to each delivery point within your compound. So that way you can probably have like one specific entry point while everything else is locked down. Or maybe you make one singular dock with for everything to come in and out. Supermax security. New security objects make it easier to search deliveries and prisoners. Additional emergency services can also be called when things get out of hand. Island Life lets you customize your island with over 15 nautical tiles and objects. Shape the land around your compound with moats, rivers, and lakes for security or for style. No access roads needed. And then The Rock. You manage infamous Alcatraz prison and Alcatraz Island with two pre made maps. So it does give you a couple of pre made map campaigns to choose from. Just looking at the DLC page, this one appears where the Escape Plan DLC looked like it added basically an entire new game mode to choose from. This one seems more like just some extra bells and whistles that I feel like maybe $10 is a little too much for this kind of a DLC package. If you were to get it on Steam with the bundle, that seems like a more fair price than $10 for the DLC itself. Because the Switch bundle for the three DLCs it comes with is still only a few dollars cheaper than all the products individually. With that kind of a thing, I would say just having seen what we look at so far for the Switch, maybe look to see if it goes on sale if this would be your preferred play method. Otherwise, you could get more on the Steam page. Next up, we have Going Green. Now, Going Green, just from the title alone, sounds like this whole little situation where you have, a little more nature conscious situation. Something that for the rehabilitative prison situations or the people who want to try a more sustainable approach to how they have things going, this could be an interesting way to play the game. Now, $10 for the DLC. We are going to look at the description. I'm hoping maybe this offers a bit more robust situation. Like it looks like it turns it into a little bit of a farming sim, which maybe could be similar to escape mode where you're basically adding an extra game mode, although not so much of a game mode, but a lot of additional features compared to the island prison, which just seems to add a little bells and whistles. The Going Green brings agriculture to your compound, introducing farming, produce exports, and a whole bunch of contraband. Of course, there's going to be contraband. Key features. So, fruits of labor. Farming introduces a new type of prison labor, allowing prisons to grow potatoes, wheat, apples, and more. Produce can be exported or used as ingredients for inmate meals. Room to grow. So, you get 3 outdoor rooms to facilitate farming, the fruit orchard, farm field, and vegetable allotment. But that's not all. Players can recruit and staff farm workers, build a pantry to store produce, and construct a shed to house farming related items. Then there's the Trouble is Brewing section. With new crops comes new contraband. Prisoners can now secretly grow herbs in the fields and swipe kitchen ingredients to brew booze. Of course, I mean, different kinds of alcohol brewing and or like bootleg alcohols in jails is a known thing. And then when you provide produce and have inmates with access to fruits and vegetables, some of them probably figure out like, hey, how can we ferment this kind of thing? So it makes sense that Introducing programs like this also introduce the kinds of things that you would have to do some problem management. Fields can also become gang turf, so keep your guards on alert. Of course, like different factions among the inmates would be a whole other deal to work with. A greener new deal. I see what they did there. Prisons get an eco-friendly makeover with solar, wind, and solar wind hybrid power sources. Excess power created by these sustainable methods can be sold back to the grid using the power export meter. So when it comes to, of course, the controversial situation of for-profit prisons, that could be something where you maybe try to manage your prison if you want to try and set it up in a way where instead of doing a for-profit prison, you set one up that maybe gives back to the community in that kind of way. And yes, it is a way of selling power back to the grid, like they said, which in turn would be a profit revenue for the prison. But at the same time, you're making that profit off of something where the prison is self-sustaining, which could be an interesting little dynamic for how you manage. I will say this DLC, just because of having it looks like it adds more than the island options do to the situation. Now, these were the three included in that Switch bundle, but there are still three more. There is a Second Chances program, and this is the one that I think looks especially interesting. On Steam, there was a trailer for this one that looked kind of interesting. You do have these characters with cakes, dogs. It shows them in what looks like group therapy sessions. Even we do see one character on this screenshot where, dude's in a suit with a monocle. He's probably the doctor, the therapist, in a little bit of a stereotypical attire. We have a bit more of an open cafe bakery situation. One of the screenshots, here we go, we see one that looks like, everybody's in a diner together. Although I'm wondering, a lot of these characters look like civilians in the diner where the prisoners appear to be staff. So it's kind of like a service industry training for them. It looks like, I'm guessing that's what it looks like. I'm going off what the screenshots look like. We get a common room here with a larger area, looks like for visiting situations. Assuming, everybody in orange is the prisoners, the blue uniform is the guard, and then what looks like, maybe some civilian situations in here. People that look more normal, I want to say. Hard to say. So, Prison Architect Second Chances gives your inmates a fresh start with reform and rehabilitation features, helping them improve behaviors and reduce sentences. Key features are return to reform, new programs such as animal therapy, meetings with civilians, and conflict resolution classes led by former prisoners can remove an inmate's negative traits and see improved behaviors. The good behavior inmates can have their sentences reduced or increased based on their actions, and reoffenders can now be sent back to prison. Players will be rewarded for each rehabilitated inmate and fined for each reoffender. So, it's something to incentivize actual genuine rehabilitation efforts. And I think just the existence of this DLC alone, especially at the lower $6 price tag compared to the other, $8.99, $9.99, this looks like an interesting incentive to gear a player towards humane and program focus. So, room for improvements. Inmates with existing or earned work credentials can become vendors to both prisoners and visitors in inmate run rooms, including bakery and restaurant. And the back to society inmates can earn work experience by partaking in different work and training programs. Now, I don't know anybody, depending on what other people's experiences are, but I have in previous jobs I have worked with people who were parts of work release programs where they would go off site in order to check in for a job. They'd have to call to check in from their work location and all that, and make sure that they got their bus and everything and reported back within their time frame and all that. And they were some genuinely nice people that I worked with too. So this is another little angle here where you can focus on, instead of an inhumane and authoritarian setup, you try and focus more on the human aspect of managing your facility. Which honestly, if I were to pick this up, that would be one of the things I would be most excited to give a shot here. Then we have Perfect Storm, which now this one looks like another focus on more of disaster management as opposed to anything to do with the characters themselves. At least that's how it looks. It does have its own trailer associated with it on the Switch, where you do see a lot of weather. There's snow, lightning, major storms that can cause structural damage to your facility, or for outdoor areas. The lightning can actually affect the characters. So if anybody is outside during a lightning storm and they get struck, that's all of a sudden a medical emergency that they have to deal with. We do see fires breaking out here at the yard, at the cafeteria, just absolute destruction going on. Snowstorm causing ice to form all over the place that might make things a little inhospitable because obviously extreme conditions can be life threatening for people, especially in facilities like this. You got to make sure everyone has appropriate air conditioning or heating depending on the weather so that, you have your well being taken care of. And not only for the inmates that you have in custody, but for the workers too, because the workers in their uniforms, like those uniforms cannot be very comfortable depending on the weather situations. We do see not only weather, but infestations, having to deal with pest management and all of that going on. You see Stevenson, Hickman, and Greensdale. It's just surrounded by rats while you have pest control out here trying to deal with a rat infestation. So that's a whole situation. We got guards going off here. This screenshot doesn't seem to show a whole lot. This must be one of the quieter moments. We do see cleaning situation or what looks like flooding. So floods are an issue that they could have to deal with. You got water pumps and mopping to try and pick that up. So Perfect Storm adds a whole bunch of disaster management. Just the this shot here with the what I would say is the cover art for it. We do see what looks like rats, poison, lightning storm, uh, toxic toxic break in sewage line, a whole lot of situations to deal with. So the coming storm warden, prison architect Perfect Storm makes it rain with grants, emergency services, staff training, and calamities. There's riot before the storm, so calamities like deep freezes, heat waves, rat infestations, and lightning storms can cause structural damage, lower prison ratings, and wreak havoc in the compound. So the lower prison rating sticks out to me here. I didn't see a mention of prison ratings in the previous pages. That tells me that there are likely some inspections and I know that jails and prisons do have to go through inspections to meet certain criteria of maintenance, treatment, upkeep, all of that kind of stuff. So the fact that the prison ratings is highlighted here, that is something I would have liked to seen highlighted on the main page, but it does tell me that they do have inspection situations going on where your rating can fluctuate depending on how your treatment goes. So there's come sell or high water. Interesting little wordplay. So pest control, plumbers, repairmen, and road maintenance emergency services are available for immediate relief from calamities. Electrician, cold control, fire safety, first aid training, and pest removal training allow staff to mitigate damage and keep things running smoothly. Granted refuge, grants for okay, so for payment grants for disaster relief, heat waves, emergency protocol, subsidence, advanced staff training, and utility retrofit grant fund much needed preparations to help ride out calamities. So that makes sense. There's the financial burden of natural disasters. Raining rats and dogs. You can check current and forecasted weather conditions and use weather prediction objects to stay appraised of any impending disasters. So you do have preventative measures to go through as well. So it does add a whole host of different things to try and prevent issues because the weather and natural disasters are going to happen, whether you like it or not. So if you have a way to mitigate that, be it, I did see in the trailer they had some lightning rods, different kinds of drainage systems you can probably set up. And then we have our last DLC, Prison Architect Gangs. Now, taking a quick look back at the Perfect Storm, I don't know about a $10 price. That does seem a bit high for basically just a natural disaster package that I feel like in a classical Sim City kind of sense would have been kind of part of the base package or, maybe a very small add-on. And then the last DLC, Gangs, is a $6 DLC on the Switch where we do see a whole host of new forms of destruction, characters with tattoos running around, different affiliations. They've got a room marked with an insignia. Uh, Honestly, it looks like kind of insignia I'd have seen in Jackie Chan Adventures or something like that, if anybody remembers the old cartoon on WB. But all these other situations, characters banding together, having their situations. You got somebody unconscious and tattoo removal program. Okay. So you do have different kinds of situations, things going in the canteen, the cafeteria here. Looks like officer patrolling, taking bribes, that thing, and the officer walking around with cash. That's kind of weird. But yeah, the gang seems to add a whole different dynamic of violence. Now, the $6 DLC does seem kind of like the lower price tag compared to some of the others, but at the same time, I'm wondering if this is again the kind of thing that I would have expected included in the base game, or at least as maybe a small later add-on. The fact that it is a paid DLC, the fact that there's this many paid DLCs feels like a little bit of a turnoff of the game. But like I said before, there is a on Steam on sale at the time of this video. If this is something that interests you, it is on sale on Steam for much cheaper than getting the bundle for less content on the Switch. They are organized, so it's your prison, their rules. They are organized and want to take control of your prison. Show them who's in charge and stop their schemes. With prison architect Gangs, you'll need to carefully manage your inmates, staff, and guard presence to avoid riots and ensure a peaceful yet profitable prison. Meet the gang so gangs form and grow as members arrive through intake or recruitment. So you have people, on the outside who are already members or recruited while they're in there. So it is something that does happen in jail situations. So it's basically a bit of a realistic portrayal, it feels like, in this situation. Each gang now has its own personality and traits and will naturally be drawn to recruiting inmates with similar attributes. There is boiling point as gangs grow and begin to flex their strength. The danger temperature of your prison will rise. Thanks to the boiling point UI, you get a detailed overview of what's affecting the life of your inmates, allowing you to act swiftly, keeping them happy, and preventing irresponsible or irrepressible riots. Reform and release. Gang members can now leave their crew, help them come clean by removing their tattoos and enrolling them in the rehabilitation program. There's new rooms for like the tattoo removal room to remove a gang's tattoos, or have gang members train in the fight club room, turning their destructive energy into fighting in a controlled environment. Oh, now the fight club room, I'm very skeptical about using that as an outlet. Like, I understand exercise programs to try and work out some of that adrenaline, some of that testosterone fueled aggression is probably a norm, but doing it in even a controlled fight situation seems like it could go wrong very quickly. I'm not sure how I feel about that one. Crooked guards. Gangs may coerce guards into smuggling contraband or accepting bribes. You can vet guards during the hiring process with bureaucracy, as well as recruit CIs to identify cards that have turned. All right, so you get little corrections investigators, I'm guessing is the acronym there, to go ahead and make sure that your staff stays clean. So that right there, being able to juggle that seems like an interesting. Although one thing of note comes up with all of these different DLCs. Some of them do mention, besides just new tiles, new types of characters, new things like that. The gangs did say that it mentioned a UI. I'm wondering if more of these DLCs do offer more UIs, how cluttered that might make the screen. That is something that just kind of strikes me with a little bit of concern, not to such a tremendous degree that am completely writing it off. Again, that is me having not played this before, obviously, but I will say the Nintendo Switch price tag, if I were to get this on Switch, I feel like playing on Switch because of its visual style. Playing on Switch would be my preferred play style. However, like I've said, Steam has more DLC packages and has them bundled together for just under $50 while it is currently on sale. I'm sure at their full price the bundle's a little bit more, obviously, but it is on a hefty sale at the time of this, whereas the Switch bundle has 3 of its 6 available DLCs for a little over $50. So that in mind, I am going to have to say that while I think I would prefer the Switch player experience, the Steam seems to offer more. So the Switch's store, I'm going to go ahead and score that a 6 out of 10 as far as the store page and how likely I would be to get this if it were to go on a hefty sale. Again, it does look like it offers a lot of potential gameplay, replayability, scenarios, whole different game modes, especially with those DLCs. The agriculture and the escape mode seem to add a lot more that give you different ways to play in addition to the base game. Although the base game itself does look like it also offers a lot. It's just that 30 is a bit much for me to have wanted to drop on it. I believe on Steam the base game was actually on sale for less than 10 if you were to get just the base, none of the DLC packages, which honestly I would probably go for the base game for that kind of a price tag. $10 or less kind of thing would be my probably my personal benchmark. But yeah, 6 out of 10 is what I'm thinking here for the Switch store page. Maybe a 7.5 on Steam for the cursory look that I gave it, especially with the fact that the Steam has a few more DLC packages for more gameplay options. It does kind of bug me that there's so many DLC packages that are paid DLC, but maybe I'm a little spoiled by the fact that things like Stardew Valley had so many free updates as opposed to something like this. I'm sure now, obviously, the fact that they do have these paid updates, hopefully that money does go to a lot of work from the developer side of things, but it is such a simple visual style that I'm hoping that it really makes true in its gameplay perspective. Like I said, it does look like something that could easily be a mobile game. Um, but at the same time, if this were a mobile game, all of that DLC would probably have been microtransactions that could potentially add up to a lot more, by baiting people into little $1 or $2 purchases for to try and like bypass timers and things. You know how mobile games go, but it is something. It looks like a mobile game, but feels like the kind of Sim City kind of situation where people who like those old kind of games, in this time adding a bit of a dynamic, so you can make your prison as humane or as totalitarian as you want. And hopefully, that if somebody does go and pick this up, let me know your gameplay experiences with this. If I were to get this, I would personally probably try and build something along the lines of the rehabilitation angle, especially with that Animal Friends DLC, where the main focus becomes trying to get programs to get inmates rehabilitated, released back into regular society. That just seems like a more interesting angle to me to try and keep that going about things. So that's my breakdown here. If anybody else out there has thoughts, by all means, leave them in the comments below. If you have other game recommendations to look at, give me a shout and let me know what you'd like to see me cover next, and we'll see what we can work in. In the meantime, thanks everybody for joining in. It has been a delight getting to do these little episodes. I know this one ran a little long, mainly because of all those DLCs in there. So I hope that all of you have a beautiful day, stay safe, and remember, the world is crazy right now, but try and keep yourselves in a little bit of a positive light. Decompress a little bit if you need to, and remember to love your fellow human being, because that I cannot stress that enough. Like, just have a little love and compassion for your fellow humans.